And before we kick into the exciting talk Matthew has for us, I will just do a short introduction about our BA Career Meetup. So BA Career Meetup was founded about 6 months ago by Sophie Chen, and now there are nearly 700 members and an active group of current, future, and potential business analysts. Our mission is to help with business analyst career transition, and we aim to build a community for BAs to share and learn, while also sharing industry insights and practical suggestions to aspiring BAs. Our group is focused on helping professionals transition into the business analysis field by providing a clear pathway and resources for success. And regarding how to get the most of this talk, we would love to encourage you to use a notebook, either digital or physical. Ask good questions during the Q&A session by typing in the chat box. Add your learning or profile to our Google Drive sheet. Connect from others on LinkedIn. Watch YouTube recording after the session. Spread the word for us if you like the event. We have more events lined up. And we are thrilled to say that there will be 2 more planned events in this month. And we have a tradition to do some group photo shootings with the cute poses. So if you can turn on your cameras, and that would be more awesome. Let's show off these pearly whites and give a big wave to the camera. Yeah, and 3, 2, 1. Cool. Okay, let's one more try. 3, 2, 1. Sweet. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now let's get to the talk, Navigating the BA Market in New Zealand. And with that, I would love to officially introduce our guest speaker, Matthew. And Matthew is a senior associate at INSIDE Recruitment and works within their business transformation team that recruits across business analyst, service design, change management, project and program management, and director roles. Although he has recruited across a wide range of job disciplines throughout his recruitment career, Matthew has found himself particularly interested in the BA market. He now focuses primarily on recruiting business analysts and service designers, and he has successfully recruited talented individuals across the country that has directly helped shape some of the key programs of work across New Zealand. Now, I'll hand it over to Matthew to proceed the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ouyang. Wow, that sounds like I do a lot of work, and really I mainly just recruit BAs and service designers, and essentially I just help people get roles at its core. Look, first and foremost, I just want to start this talk by saying I'm not the best public speaker, and I appreciate you giving your time up on a Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock as well. So if I stutter or speak too quickly or stumble, thank you in advance for listening to me. I guess what's probably important is to say what this role is not about. Although I am a recruiter, I am not here to recruit you or advertise myself. This is more about sharing my insights that I've gained over my career, and in particular about the BA market and how to position yourself to stand out from the crowd. What I'll also not be doing is discussing different types of BA roles. I think that there are other people that are far better suited to doing this than me. So instead, what you can expect to hear tonight is we'll go through some of the essentials that I think are needed to have in your toolbox when sort of looking for new roles. So we'll look at what is a good CV, your online profile, LinkedIn, networking, and then how to engage with recruiters and what are recruiters as well. Then we'll do a small bit about salary negotiation and how to sort of enter the discussion with a hiring manager, and also just knowing what the salary is for a certain role within the market. And then I'll provide you with some data about what those figures are. And lastly, I'll give you some thoughts as to what my thoughts will be on for the next 6 months of this year are, because it's an interesting year. It's a different one. It's an election year as well. So without further ado, let's look at the next slide, which is, sorry, there we go. The essentials for looking for a role, which is the first thing I would say is that is important is a well-crafted CV. So a CV is your first opportunity to talk, or to essentially talk to a hiring manager. At the most, I would say you have about 10 seconds to impress someone with a CV. And it's, and as a BA, part of a BA in doing a BA role well is to be able to portray and put a whole bunch of information in a very succinct and digestible way. And this is your first opportunity to do that for a prospective employer. There are easily 1,000 different CV templates out there in the market, and I've seen everything from an A3 template, a one-pager CV. I've seen a PowerPoint presentation CV before. I've seen a website, a game CV, like just everything. However, I found that throughout my career, I still come back to simple. Just simple is key. It's easy to read. It's easy to understand. It's easy to get information out of as well. Sure, you can spend a lot of time making a CV very pretty and a bunch of colors and photos and cool things like that, but it detracts away from what's most important, and that is the content. Ultimately, this is your opportunity to, to present yourself in a very short, way. I would say the rule of thumb is between sort of 3 and 5 pages, which is not a lot. And so it's how to use the retail space on each piece of paper as effectively as possible. So you'll see on the screen in front of you is just some screenshots of a template that I have recommended. And I created this for our company, and it's on our website, and I think Nina will put this in the chat box now as well. And this obviously, as I said, there's 1,000 different CV templates out there, but from my experience, I find this one sort of gets a lot of traction and it's very easy to read, particularly when there's like 10 CVs in front of me, and the one I'm drawn to the most is the one that's just that I can read within sort of 30 seconds. I can get most information I want to from the first few pages. So let's look at that then. So the first page, this is kind of the snapshot of you. And then the next few pages goes into more detail about your work experience. So on your first page, the non-negotiables that I would say that are needed would be your name, your contact detail, your visa, so that shows the employer or hiring manager that you are able to work in New Zealand, and then the location. Now, a pro tip here, location should not be where you're currently living, but rather where you're working or wanting to work. And the reason being, this is for when hiring managers are looking at a CV and they see a location on a CV, it just helps them then sort of sort through the rest of the CVs that they're looking at, but it also helps them from like a searching criteria perspective on a database. Yeah, so like if you're overseas and you're looking for a role within New Zealand, list one of the cities in New Zealand that you'd like to work in. Under your name and under all this information should be a short description of yourself. Then I would go into sort of skills, a very high level overview of your skills. And this could be soft skills or technical skills. And then below that, I would say just in a table, have your role, the company you worked at, and the duration that you spent at that company. So that way, if I were to look at a CV, I can get I can tell a little bit about the person, about what their interests are, what skills they bring to the table, and a very high-level overview of the career history. On the next few pages is where you go into detail about your work experience. Now, you can easily do a whole page per role. I would encourage people to sort of look at doing, 1/3 to half a page dedicated to one role. That way, you're not sort of writing a whole essay, but also it just means it's easier for me to, again, digest one role, and then you got to think about, as a BA, you always think about your end user, and me as an end user, when I'm reading your CV, I just see one role, and then I can move on to the next role on the same piece of paper. And it's just, I find I can get a better understanding of your work history a lot quicker and a lot easier. And how I go about doing this is, again, the role title, the organization you've been at, and the duration that you spent at that company. But then I would give a very brief description of the responsibilities that you held, a few bullet points of what you achieved, and then what I think is a nice little sort of cherry on top is some of the key lessons that you learned from that organization that you can take to the next organization. So it's just like, it's showing the competencies that you can then transfer to the next company. So do this for the next sort of from page 2 to page 4. And then on page 5 would be where you go education, any certificates or professional sort of courses that you've done. And then what I find is actually quite nice as well is when there's a quote from a referee on there. So obviously you would need to have the quote from the referee, and they need to give you the sort of approval to have it on your CV. But I find this, it's just sort of a nice way to say that, it's a nice way to round off your CV by showing that someone else backs you up as well. So yeah, that's how my view of what a good CV looks like. However, it really comes down to finding a CV that best represents you. This is only a template, and I would say play around with this. Have peers look at this as well. Don't be afraid to pass a draft on to a recruiter or someone that you know and trust, and get the input as well. I'm just having a bit of delay with the slides. Here we go. So the next part of what I'd say is a very essential toolkit to have is your online presence. So in 2023, there's whether we like it or not, we have a digital footprint, and there's nothing we can do to get away from that. So the very first thing I would do when looking for a new role is probably Google yourself, because chances are a employer is probably going to Google you. So do a bit of data cleansing, go on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, and just see that, is there something there that doesn't represent you in the way you want it to represent you? Is there something that you don't want an employer to see? Because if it is, then those are things that I would definitely remove and just clean up. And yeah, I think this is something that is often overlooked, and people forget about this, and they think, oh, it's my personal life. It doesn't matter. And I would say, particularly for permanent roles, that it does matter, and especially for more senior roles as well. To find the more senior roles are, the more sort of vetting that someone does on your life, whether we like it or not. Unfortunately, the information's out there, so it's just we can have the opportunity to control what information potential employers will see. The next is around your LinkedIn profile. So LinkedIn is one of those tools that we obviously all know, and we are most likely on as well. However, it's one of those tools I find that not everyone knows how to use well. It's incredibly powerful in terms of helping promote yourself, your personal brand, but also being able to build your network up and help secure future roles. So LinkedIn is essentially a virtual CV. And how to do this properly, or in my view of what I think makes a good LinkedIn profile, is first and foremost is have a LinkedIn photo. That's absolutely key, just so that whoever's looking at your profile knows that you are real and a real human being. Have a bio or description of yourself. This can actually be taken from your CV. And then in all your roles, have a detailed description of your roles. Don't just list the roles that you've worked, but I find it's a lot better when you have more information. And I find as well, and LinkedIn does this as well, is that the more information you have on me, the more the algorithm likes you, the more likely it is to promote your profile and recommend it to other people as well. But LinkedIn is one of those things that is key for people that are looking for a new role, but also people who are comfortable in their current role and may not be considering opportunities for the next year or 2 years. It's one of those things that I think that I encourage all candidates to be on and be a part of and be across. It allows you to, one, connect with people that you have previously worked with. It allows you to read, keep up to date with new articles, new BA trends. It's also has a few magical features. So a lot of people have probably used this function already, but let me explain how it works. That open to work little button that you can say, yeah, cool, I'm open and looking for a new role. What that does is to people who have access to LinkedIn Recruiter, such as myself, it's a service that we pay for as an organization. It means that I get notified that you're actively looking for a role. And which means then when on a Monday morning, I show up to my desk and over the weekend, people have updated their profile. First thing I do is I have my morning coffee and I see, oh, Sophie's looking for a new role. And then I will probably look at contacting. Sophie's not looking for a new role. She's very happy in her current role. Trust me, I've already tried. But yeah, so it's a really good function to use. And I think that often candidates will click it, they'll look for a new role and they'll click open to new opportunities, and then they'll forget to turn it off, or they'll just forget to continue engaging with that sort of function. And I would say it's a live function. So you turn it off. So you turn it on when you're looking and turn it off when you're not looking. And if you've had a bit of maybe you want 4 weeks off of not getting any contact, then turn it off and then turn it back on again. And this will bring you back up to the list again. The same function is actually on Seek Premium. So Seek is obviously a job board where you go and you apply for a job, but it's a lot more than that. You can also create a virtual profile. Unlike Seek, it doesn't allow you to interact with other people, but what it does instead is allows you to put your CV on, creating a virtual profile, and then also say that you are open to new opportunities. Again, this notifies hiring managers, recruiters, or even internal HR. So it's another good function to look at. So that's sort of your online presence. And these are really good things to have. So far we've looked at, have a good CV, have a good LinkedIn profile, cleaning your online, your personal online presence as well. But the most important thing you can possibly do is your networking. So networking is one of those things that is overlooked, I would say. And what I found is a lot of candidates don't do this, but it's a very, very powerful one. Here's a scary statistic for you, is that 75% of the jobs that you find will be through networking or through referrals. So only 25% are actually found through you being at home on your laptop and applying for a role through a job board. So when you think of that, that should really challenge you and think, hang on, if I want to stay ahead of the curve and really get a good role, I should be out there interacting with my network, interacting with my peers. So events like this are brilliant. They are absolutely crucial to help you meet other BAs and meet potential hiring managers. But what I would just say is look beyond that. Is don't just go to BA events or don't just interact with them. Is that look at who are the people that work with BAs, who are the people that hire BAs. Interact with project and program managers. Look at Scrum Masters and Agile leads. Interact with change managers. Go to some of these events. Go to some of these conferences. Chances are, particularly in New Zealand, is that you'll probably meet someone, establish a relationship, and end up working with them or for them later down the line. This is a very big thing, and I really recommend and encourage people to do. It's also that I think what's important to realize is that it's not just the hiring manager that makes a decision of whether you get a role or not. The hiring manager may hold the purse strings and have the budget, but often there's another person, a person of influence that actually helps you get that role. So, for example, if I was to go to an event and meet a really good project manager, and we sparked up a good relationship, and then 12 months down the line, that project manager is working at another organization, and their program manager is looking for a new person to hire, that project manager is probably going to think, oh, I met Matt, he's a really good person. I can't hire him, but my program manager can. I will influence him and I will recommend. So that's why I say is just think of the process just a little differently. And I think you'll have a lot better success, especially leading into the next few months. The next thing I would say is looking at a recruitment partnership. So let's first discuss what is a recruiter. Essentially, they are a facilitator of relationships. It's finding good candidates and letting them meet good clients and vice versa. That's at its core what my role is to help both candidates and clients essentially meet and then facilitate that relationship and encourage conversation and then manage the ongoing relationship between the two. But what does it actually look like? Because I can imagine as a candidate, you think, oh, okay, well, what are you actually doing though, Matt, behind the scenes? So the first scenario is this. A client comes to me and says, hey, Matt, I am looking for this type of BA. They need to have this skill set. This is a type of team we currently have in our organization. So they need to match this cultural fit and these values. And a nice to have would be these other things. And then I go, okay, cool. I'll go out to my current network that I know, and I will look for this person. And most of the time, I will obviously make sure that this person can meet the technical and skills-based requirements, but a large part of my role is actually making sure that they can meet the cultural fit and that they will get along with this client, and then I introduce it to. However, this also happens in the other way. Scenario 2 would be where I meet a really good candidate and I build a relationship with this candidate and I get to understand more about them, what their skills are, what motivates them, what gets them out of bed every day, what they enjoy, what they're looking for in a new role, what organizations they would like to work for. I then take that information and I go and think about what clients that I currently work with and go, that candidate may do really well with this particular client. And then I will contact that client and ask them if they have an opportunity, or at least if they can meet my candidate. And again, I help facilitate that conversation. And most of the time that actually leads to a really good result. So that's at its core, what I sort of do on a daily basis. And obviously that level of engagement will change depending on whether it is a permanent or fixed term role or whether it's a contract assignment. The level of pace at which we operate changes a little differently. However, I would also argue that there is a significant part that a candidate that you, such as yourself, plays when dealing with a recruiter. So this is where I would put ownership on candidates and to say to do the research and find a recruiter that best represents you. So there are a lot of recruiters out there. There are easily over 100 agencies, and within those agencies, there's a lot of recruiters that work in them. But not all recruiters are best suited to represent you, and particularly as a BA. So it would probably not work if a BA went to a recruiter who specialized in program management. That person will probably not be best suited to help you find a good role or to understand your skill set, nor probably have the client base that would be best targeted. So my recommendation is we recruiters will interview a candidate, but you can also interview the recruiter and to ask them about, what areas do they specialize in? What roles do they best work? Who are their clients? What are the methods that they use to market you? And these are very valid questions, and these are important things to understand. And I think it's key to understand is to try and find a recruiter that you share values with as well. And yeah, but then your question to me is probably going to be, but Matt, you've just contradicted yourself. There are so many recruiters out there. I can't do that with everyone. And I would say 100%. That's where I have this less is more. You know, it's quality over quantity. My rule of thumb, and this is including with candidates that I work with and that I've worked with for a number of years, is that I always say to them, hey, I recommend you work with probably 2 to 3 agencies, maybe 4 if you really need to. But I find if you put some time and effort into building a good relationship with 2 to 3 different recruiters, then they'll really understand you and you can really understand how they work. You'll probably end up working together on many different assignments. Here's a little pro tip for you. And over the last 2 years that I've been at INSIDE Recruitment, I have never advertised for a single role. I have only promoted roles on LinkedIn, and that's really to promote to my network and my followers, but also for personal branding. But I've never advertised a role on Seek or Trade Me or any of the other job boards. Don't tell my boss that. They probably wouldn't be very happy that I haven't done that. But there's a reason, and that's because of most of the candidates that I place are people that I already know, that I've met over my career, that we have established relationships. I know what they're looking for, and they know the clients that I work with. And if they don't, then the rest of the people that I get would be referrals from those candidates as well. So this just really emphasizes a previous point I made about building your network and really doing networking. So salary negotiation. This is an interesting topic. First and foremost, I would say people should have conversations about salary. Numbers should not be hidden. Should not be afraid to talk about this with your peers or with other people within your network. This should be an open conversation, and I encourage that. It's because then you can actually know what other people are being paid, and you can also know your net worth. I would always recommend to candidates, both who are actively seeking new roles and for candidates who are in the current roles and not looking for a role, is to know what the current market rate is, to keep up with current market trends and market demand. So how to do this is actually very simple. There's a large number of agencies that do quarterly or annual salary sort of guides, and believe it or not, this is actually something I do. I sign up to some of my competitors and I look at their websites and I go, oh, this is your salary guide. And I do this just to fact check myself and just to validate my own thinking. But I encourage people to do this and do it for a large number of different agencies and look at these salary guides, read through it. But also jump on Seek every 3 months if you're not looking for a role. Jump on Seek and look and go, oh, so that's what the current senior BA rate is paying. I think one of the sad things I see is when candidates are in a role for 3 years and they haven't had a rate increase, and I sort of go, it's a topic that you need to address. It's a continuous topic. It's not an annual topic either. It's probably more so for contracting. The contracting rate sort of changes a lot due to market demand. So if there's less supply and more demand, the rates normally go up, and vice versa. And permanent roles sort of don't oscillate as much, but there is still a change. And I think in perm, candidates often forget that there is still a change, and it's important to look at that change and to go, if you haven't received an increase in 2 years' time, it's probably time to have that conversation with someone in your organization. However, I also think it is important to understand the different bandings, and this is where gain, like I said, with networking, is to talk with your peers, talk with people who hire BAs, talk with the project manager to understand the competencies that are required. So if you're a BA and you're moving into a senior BA role and you're going to get a nice salary increase, is to also understand the competency that's required at that level. But if you're a permanent candidate that's going to shift into a contract role, is to also understand that. Is that what I've seen over the last 2 years, due to the very high demand for BAs and the very low supply, is that a lot of candidates shifted from permanent roles to contract roles because it was obviously their financial gain could be greater. However, some struggled and didn't quite understand the competency that was required, or the operating sort of level that is required at that different banding level. Is that if you were to move from a permanent position into a contract role, our clients have a very different level of expectation of what they expect you to produce on a daily basis. So it's just to be aware of that and to understand it. Lastly, I would also encourage people is to look beyond just salary. Is that there is a large number of organizations that will actually hire candidates. I've recently had this with one of my candidates that was hired into an organization and the salary banding was really good, and then they decided no, they just want to put this candidate on a BA course. And I think that is fantastic, and there's actually a large number of organizations that do this. And so when interviewing for a role, it's obviously discuss the salary up front with the hiring manager or with the recruiter, so that you know what you're getting into, but also inquire further about, well, what else? What are the other benefits? Are there internal career development opportunities? Are there other courses that this employer can put you on? Who else is this role working with? That's actually a very key one, and I encourage candidates to consider, is that sometimes it's worth taking a bit of a pay cut to work with someone who's very well networked and who's just very, very good, who will then be able to propel your career even further. So it's taking that sort of long-term approach. Yeah, so the next page is going to have just a bunch of figures around what I found to be the current market rates. So what I've done to do this is I just looked over the last sort of 12 months of the roles that I've worked, and then I've fetched this with a bunch of other salary guides as well, and then I just brought it back to just what the July and June, July figures are. So obviously you'll see that there's a difference in the different bandings for permanent roles, and then hourly rate is a significant increase as well. But as I say, the operating level increases as well. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the market size of New Zealand. So what I did was just a small analysis of how many candidates are actually BAs in New Zealand. And so through LinkedIn, I can draw down and do a bit of a search, and I found that there was over 6,000 people who are actively working in a BA role. So I think that was quite interesting. So it gives you an understanding of how large the BA market is and how many peers or potential peers you actually have. And it's quite a large area, but it's not as big as, like, let's say, project management. Project management is almost double this. So that's an interesting, just a little figure as well. I can share this information later on as well if anyone wants. I'm more than happy to create a salary guide for people. So, I'm just having trouble with that last slide again. This is an interesting one, and I was hesitant to put this on and talk about this tonight, but I'm going to give it a crack anyway. So what's next for 2023? As I said before, the last 2 years have been a very interesting recruitment ride. The market's been insanely busy. I can imagine a number of you have received calls on a weekly basis, if not daily basis, from recruiters saying, hey, here's a role. Will this continue into the next 6 months? I think we will see a very different market. I don't think it's going to be the same as the last 2 years. I think we've got lots of factors to consider. You know, you've got the election year coming up, which means that government is often a lot more restrained at spending. They're less likely to start new programs of work because they don't want that to get canned if there's a change in government. You've got things like the recession to consider, an increase in inflation, just general sort of some technology changes as well, AI, or the introduction of AI and what that means for the BA role. Personally, I don't think it's going to change the BA role significantly yet. I think there's always going to be a need for BAs. In my view, they are still the doers of the organization as well. And without them, stuff won't get done. But I think what's key to understand is that it is going to be different. So whatever tactics candidates have used over the last few years to look for a role, I don't think that's going to continue working in the next 6 to 12 months. I think it's important to understand that this is going to be a very client-driven market as opposed to a candidate-driven market. So what that means is that as a recruiter, for example, I need to have very tight and good shortlists when presenting to a client. But as a candidate means you need to have everything polished. So this is where I think hopefully this talk has been beneficial, is having a good CV is absolutely key. Having a good online presence, you clean up all the things you don't want, having a good LinkedIn profile, but then the most important is getting out there and networking with others. I think this is going to separate the candidates in the current market. The ones who will get really good opportunities will be the ones who network and who get out there as well. And then obviously engaging with some recruitment agencies if you think that's appropriate and you find someone who can best represent you. So yeah, that brings me to my conclusion. Hopefully that was helpful. And now I welcome some questions and I'll do my best at answering this.
Wow, what an insightful talk. Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing your expertise and experiences with us. Yeah, and I believe that all the audiences have benefited a lot for your insights and let us know how to stand out and well prepared before we hunt for a job as a BA. And thank you for sharing so much great ideas about how to collaborate with recruiters, as well as the insights about the data in the BA markets. Now it's time for us to move to the Q&A session. And I encourage the participants can type your questions in the Zoom chat. Okay. Now, let's move to the first question. Worth depends on the business needs. What will be suggestions when your worth is less when the business needs changes?
That's a good question. So I'll give my best shot at answering this question. And I would say that from my understanding from reading this as well, is that if you are starting in a new assignment, and let's say it's a 12-month contract and you're spending the first 9 months in that role sort of operating and doing an operating role. And that's a big deal. And you're getting paid a lot of money for that. Let's say $140 an hour. And then you finish it, but you still have another 3 months left on your assignment, and then you start doing something like documentation, but you're still getting paid $140 an hour. What does that mean? Well, I would say, look, you're still still worth your initial engagement. You're still, that doesn't drop down. However, I would say your worth is slightly dictated by the market trend. So if the demand decreases, then you need to be willing to go down with the rate decrease as well. but it's never going to decrease significantly. You're not going to go from suddenly being $140 an hour to $100 an hour. So hopefully that answers that.
Okay, and thank you for sharing. Now let's move to the second question. Seeing there will be more and more digital transformation, will there be a potential market about BA focus on data?
Again, this is an interesting question, and I'm not a data expert whatsoever. However, from my perspective and in my opinion from some of the things I've read over the last 6 months, I would say that this is going to be a big focus. My preference, or sorry, no, my recommendation is that if you have some experience in data or can do it, is to expand on that, to learn more. It's pretty obvious that that's the landscape of the BA market, but also the landscape of so many roles are going to change regardless. And I'm already seeing how much data is going to impact other roles. Just as an organization, we are starting to put more effort into just recruiting data-based type of roles as well, and digital transformation, not just business transformation, just because we're seeing an increase in those type of requirements. So I guess based just on that, I would say, yeah, focus more on that, definitely.
Yeah, okay, thank you for sharing. And this answer was super informative, and especially for the people who focus on the data perspective. And now let's move to the third question. What are the main difference of HR and recruiter when interacting with HR and recruiter? Anything we need to pay attention to behaving differently with HR and recruiter?
That's a good question. Look, there are definitely two different functions. The HR, like an internal HR function, is going to be working for a business, so for all the organizations. So they're representing the organization's interests. They are also probably going to be more sort of generalists, as opposed to, so it's very unlikely. I've never seen it personally, like I've never seen an internal HR function that's just dedicated to recruiting VAs. So you'll probably find that those people will recruit 20 different type of roles, whereas a recruiter is like such as myself. I have done more generalist roles in my past, but whereas right now all I focus on is the BA market, and what I find is that then allows me to give my clients the best service because I understand the BA market, but also I can work with my candidates and really understand what they are. So it's one, a recruiter is probably going to be more specialist, but also the recruiter is working for both the client and the candidate. So they have two parties of interest that they need to consider and please as well. So the client is paying the recruiter. The candidate is not paying the recruiter at all, and it's a completely free service to the candidate.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And I think and most of us can have a better understanding between the difference between the HR and the recruiter. And if we want to know further information about how to better cooperate with the recruiter, and welcome us to follow Matthew's LinkedIn and have a better connection with him. And now let's move to the next question. Normally, how much level of techniques that a recruiter understands of the role?
I'm assuming if I'm reading this question correctly and understanding this means, so let's say I get a job brief, is that how much of that job brief should I understand in order to translate that to a candidate? I'm assuming that's what this question means. And if it does, how I'm going to answer that is, I'm going to try and understand the job brief and the requirements as best as I can. But at the end of the day, my role is I'm a recruiter. I'm not a BA. So there's definitely going to be limitations. I'm going to do my best to understand what a good BA is, but I'm never going to be able to do what a BA does. And I'm not going to be able to get into the nitty-gritties of the technical bits of their CV. But then that's not my role, and that's not a recruiter's role. And if the recruiter can do that, then that's awesome. But then I would question and go, well, the recruiter's role is to work with you and to work for the client and to put both you and the client together and to facilitate that relationship and successfully put you into a role. And the recruiter's role is to know how to market you and have the techniques and the know-how of how to do that. And I think if that's more important as opposed to fixating on the recruiter doesn't know the exact skills and doing and what I can work on. So an example of this is I used to recruit front-end developers and testers. And this is a very long time ago. I'm not a developer at all. I can't read code in the slightest. But what I could do is talk to my candidates and go, hey, can you show me some of your code? Can you at least just take me through the basics just so I can understand what you're doing on a daily basis? And then what I could do is really get an understanding for them, and I could build a relationship with them. I could then obviously go into the things I mentioned earlier on, is really understanding what they are looking for, and then I knew what methods to market them to my clients. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. That was very insightful. About the question 6, if a recruiter approaches me with a role that I'm not that willing to take, should I accept the interview for practice or just ask the recruiter to find another one?
Yeah, I would say if you're not willing to take a role, then definitely don't go to the interview. I think it would be a waste of your time and the client's time and the recruiter's time to go to an interview just for practice. I also think it would be brand damaging for yourself and probably the recruiter's brand as well. And then therefore I would question, is that serving your relationship with the recruiter? If the recruiter is pushing you to go to an interview that you don't want to, you've got to sit back and ask yourself, is this the right person to represent me for a role? And I don't think it would be. But I would encourage people not to go to that interview, because if it's really not something you want to go to, or you're not interested in the role, you're going to leave a sour taste in the client's mouth. And New Zealand's too small to do that. You're separated by 2 degrees, and there's a good chance that you'll bump into this person later on again. And so it's best to politely step out of the process. And chances are, you might actually meet this person later down the line and then get a role with them.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for clarifying that. I think the best way to collaborate with the recruiter is try to be frank, be honest, to express your willingness, whether you really like to take this role, instead of to try to pretend you liked it and finally you give up. It is a waste of time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, thank you. And now the next question is a 3-page CV not too long, or is it better to compress it to 2 pages max?
Yeah, good question. Look, I think, like I said earlier on, I've seen everything, like so many different CVs. I've seen a 30-page CV before. CV 3 pages, that's probably more on the minimum that I would go. I actually think it's better to go 5 pages personally. Whereas, anything from 3 to 5. 2 sometimes can be a little too short. It's actually probably going to be more determined by how much level of experience and how many years you've been working for. So someone for 20 years with a 20-year career is probably going to find it very difficult to put all their experience on in 2 pages. But they might find the 5-page option a lot easier. Whereas someone who's been working for 5 years with only, let's say, 2 or 3 different roles, they would find the 3-pager a lot easier, and maybe the 5-page CV a little bit more daunting. So it's kind of governed by how long you've been working for, how much experience you have, how much information you can put on the page. And remember, it's the content that you put on the page rather than how much. So it's using the space effectively. but you don't want to go too short and then sort of look like you don't have enough experience either. There's that fine line there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, these suggestions are quite helpful. And I also want to recommend to our participants, if you don't know how to polish your CV, and you can also go over our previous event on our YouTube channel to watch the recording about how to do a good CV before you hunt for a job. And also, we encourage you to interact with INSIDE Recruitment to get more help. Okay, and now let's move to the next question. Does BA certifications like CCBA, CBAP add value and weight to the CV? Does candidates get preference if have these BA certifications in the CV?
Good question. I am going to say, from my perspective, it's a no. And I don't want to say that to be disrespectful of people who are currently studying those skill sets. I think they are very valuable, and some of my clients have said, hey, they're actually are necessary. But I've never, it's never been a requirement that has stopped me from adding or successfully placing a candidate into a role. It's actually, I find that the work experience and the lessons that they've learned from the previous roles that they can take to the next role is far more important than the education or courses that they've taken.
Okay, thank you. About the question 9, if the current salary is under the market, should we still disclose in the CV how to properly negotiate salary in this situation?
Okay. So if the current salary is under the market, so I wouldn't disclose any salary on your CV, but I would definitely negotiate or talk to the hiring manager or the recruiter about what you're looking for, and be pretty strong about what you're looking for, and ask them what the current banding of the role is, and see if there's an alignment there. Probably not answering that question in the best way, but probably because I don't understand the question, if that's all right.
Okay, if you have some further questions, and you can type in our Zoom chat or after the session, and we can collect all the questions and send you the and upload the answers from Matthew to our Google Sheet, and welcome us to join our engagement and get more insights from our future contents shared on our document. Okay, now let's go to the question 10. And you mentioned that less is more in dealing with recruiters, which I personally agree with. Thus, what are your red flags of a recruiter who may be super in representing you, and how to know they're not the right fit for you?
Ooh, I like this question. It's red flag straight away is someone who's pushing you into a role that you don't want to do. Someone who doesn't give you feedback, or who says they'll present you for a role and then don't do that. So essentially, what I'm illustrating is, is a recruiter who is not representing you and for your best interests. It's not that they don't respect you. Essentially, is that, yeah, if someone is just sending your CV to a client without asking you first, that's also a big red flag to me. I think they need to make sure that you have said yes. If they're pushing you into a role to take something and you don't want to take it, then that instantly is a big no. That means that they don't understand you, or they're trying to get just a financial gain out of it. Don't get me wrong, there's times when a recruiter may need to do some negotiating on behalf of the client with you. That's definitely different to them pushing you into a role. But yeah, I think it's if at any time you feel you go, this isn't right, this doesn't feel right, or this recruiter's done something that just it's not representing my values, then instantly that relationship's not right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. That's a very valid perspective. Okay. And due to the time limit, I think we can only answer these questions. And if you have some further questions, please feel free to leave in the comments, and our co-host will collect all the questions into our document, and we will answer the questions by the shared document afterwards. Okay. Well, as we can see, we have had so many questions. Yeah. Okay. And thank you again, Matthew, for your time tonight. And appreciate everyone for joining us. Don't forget to join our community and stay connected with our like-minded people. If you are happy with our event, please refer our meetup to your friends and your colleagues. And we welcome your feedback on the meetup page so that we can improve the quality of our events. We will appreciate for that. We will also upload the recording to our YouTube channel. Welcome to subscribe. Please check all relevant links in the Zoom chat. Hope to see you guys at our next event on Thursday, 13th of July, which will be delivered by Shifi regarding the topic of a BA's guide to world domination. And thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Matthew. It's
Have a
quite
good
fun.
Bye.
Bye.